I'd like to speak to you for a few minutes on the covenants as found in the letter to the Hebrews. That book, the letter to the Hebrews, is a vital book in coming to a proper understanding of the doctrine of the new covenant. I would encourage you to look at the passages I've listed in the text below this video clip and read those passages out loud to yourself. Let them speak for themselves. In this video clip, all I will do is draw attention to some of the salient points that I would encourage you to notice and to weigh very carefully. You'll see that I've referred to Hebrews chapter 2, Hebrews 7, 8, 9, and 10, and Hebrews 12. I've listed the actual verses, the paragraphs, in the text below. Let me just distill from those passages some of the words and phrases and sentences that I would like you to pay special attention to. Let me just read some of these words to you. The message declared by angels. How shall we escape if we neglect such a great salvation? In speaking of a new covenant, he makes the first one obsolete. He is the mediator of a new covenant. Under the first covenant, not even the first covenant was inaugurated without blood. Every commandment of the law had been declared by Moses to all the people. Under the law, the copies of the heavenly things, but the heavenly things themselves. The law has but a shadow of the good things to come, instead of the true form of these realities. The law of Moses, the Son of God, the blood of the covenant, grace. You have not come to, but you have come to. Now that will sound garbled to you. If you read the passages out loud for yourselves, you will see those phrases and sentences in their proper context. But I put it to you, what I've read to you speaks of a very, very clear contrast between what is known as the first or old covenant and the second or the new covenant. Moses, the Son of God, Christ. The blood of bulls, goats, sheep, the blood of Christ. The ineffective offerings, the one effective offering. And so on and so on. The law, the gospel. And what you will find if you read those passages out loud, and even in the garbled section I've just given to you, you will see that the writer to the Hebrews draws a very, very clear contrast between those two covenants. The first, or the old, the law, and the new, or the second, the gospel. He does it in three leading ways. The warning for breaking the covenants, chapter 2. The warning for breaking the covenants, if you break the old covenant, it's very serious, he says. If you break the second covenant, if you're not in the second covenant, it's absolutely beyond words how disastrous it is. It's everlastingly disastrous. Chapter 7, 8, 9, and 10. The word that sums that up is, the first covenant was ineffective. The new covenant is absolutely effective. By one offering, he has perfected forever. Jesus has those who are being sanctified. The 12th chapter, the contrast is between the natures of the two covenants, Mount Sinai and Mount Zion. This is only a brief clip, but I put it to you. The writer to the Hebrews contrasts these two covenants. Of course, he does it for his readers, who were in danger of going back to the old covenant as Jewish believers. They were going back to the old covenant, leaving Christ. And he's telling them in plain and blunt and cogent terms, the old covenant is obsolete, is redundant, having been fulfilled by Christ. It was ineffective anyway. It was a shadow, and Christ has fulfilled it and brought in the new covenant, grace, mercy, forgiveness, effective, everlasting salvation. Don't go back, he says. Now, why am I saying this? Well, the contrast is, as I say, as plain as a pikestaff between these two covenants. But covenant theologians, I say, won't have it at any price. They say the two covenants, the old and the new, are not different covenants at all. They're one and the same covenant. Indeed, the Abrahamic covenant is one with it. They even invent one for Adam. And they say it's all the same one covenant, just different administrations. Lots of dreadful consequences follow from that mistake. But the point I'm making here in this clip is this. That must be absolute rubbish and nonsense. Why? Because no book in the Bible shows more clearly the contrast, the radical disjoint between these two covenants, the law and the gospel. The covenant of Moses, Sinai, the law, and the new covenant of Jesus Christ. I ask you, read the letter to the Hebrews, those passages particularly, that I've marked below in the text. Read it out loud. Let it speak for itself. And I assure you, you will come to the conclusion. You can't come to any other conclusion. But the first and the second covenants are entirely different. They're chalk and cheese. The law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. And the letter to the Hebrews expands that, explains it, sets it out in great detail. And at the end, you're left with this conclusion, that in the new covenant, we have all the effective accomplishment of Christ. We must not go back to the old. We must not try and mix the two covenants. Covenant theology is quite wrong. It's based on this false premise, and it leads to dreadful consequences. New covenant theology takes the letter to the Hebrews as it stands and lets it speak as it wants to speak to us. We do not impose our construct on that book. We form our opinions, our views. We run our lives. We base our everlasting salvation upon the truth the writer of the Hebrews set out. I remind you of this leading text once more. By one offering, the Lord Jesus Christ has perfected forever all who are being sanctified. And the letter to the Hebrews shows that the two covenants, the old and the new, are radically different. They are not one and the same. Do not miss the contrast between the covenants.